The Australians didn't even die for Australia. They died for Britain, for their empire, not our country. A double lie then, a lie within a lie. What was the alternative in Britain's time of need? Well, we might answer, staying home for one thing and not dying in other people's wars. And yet the horrific suffering of so many Australians for distant empires has now become not a terrible warning, not a salient story of the blood sacrifice that must be paid by nations lacking in independence, not the unhappy beginning of an unbroken habit, but bizarrely the purported origin story of us as an independent people. The growing state-funded cult of Anzac will see $1.1 billion spent by the Australian government on war memorials between 2014 and 2028. Those who lost their lives deserve honour, and I know from my father's experience how meaningful that can be. But when veterans struggle for recognition and support for war-related suffering, you begin to wonder what justifies this particular expense, this growing militarisation of national memory, or, to be more precise, a forgetting of anything other than an official version of war as the official version of our country's history, establishing dying in other people's wars as our foundation story. And so the Monash Centre, for all its good intentions, for all the honour it does the dead, is at its heart a centre for forgetting. It leads us to forget that the 62,000 young men who died in World War I died in the service of one distant empire fighting other distant empires. It leads us to forget that not one of those deaths it commemorates was necessary. Not 62,000, not even one. Lest we forget, we will all chant next week, as we have all chanted for a century now. And yet it is as if all that chanting only ensures we remember nothing. If we remembered, would we 100 years later still allow our young men to be sent off to kill or be killed in distant conflicts, defending yet again not our country, but another distant empire? We should, of course, question these things more. We could even go so far as to ask why, if we were actually genuine about remembering patriots who have died for this country, why we would not first spend $100 million on a museum honouring the at least 65,000 estimated Indigenous dead who so tragically lost their lives defending their country here in Australia in the frontier wars of the 19th century. Why is there nowhere in Australia telling the story of the massacres, the dispossession, the courageous resistance of these patriots?